Hello everybody. This video is going to be about the JDM headlights, specifically how to make a USDM compatible wiring harness for them. When I got my set of headlights, I was wanting to make as close of a plug-and-play solution as I could. So I'm going to kind of go through what I did to achieve that. Initially, looking at the JDM connector and the USDM connector, it will look a little bit more difficult than it actually is, considering when I started, I was just thinking that all I would have to do was solder the USDM connector onto the JDM wiring harness. You could do that, but it'd actually be a lot more work than what I'm about to show you is. Getting the wiring harness to work actually becomes really easy to wrap your head around once you realize something really important. That being, the JDM turn signal is different from the USDM turn signal. Both have a running light and a light for flasher, but in the United States market, that is one bulb. A dual contact bulb that has a low power setting for just when the car's on, running, using for parking lights, and then it has a secondary contact that engages when the signal's on. The JDM headlight actually splits that into two different bulbs, like a 194, 168 size bulb for the running light, and just a regular white incandescent bulb, and then an amber single contact bulb for the turn signal that only activates under the turn signal. That way you get the same effect but with two different colors, because the JDM does not have the requirement of using an amber corner light all the time. I'm not sure why they have that in the US. I could probably figure that out, but I'm too lazy to look for it. So looking at the back of the headlight here, if you remove the dust cap, it's easier to get to. You can see it right there. That is the running bulb that replaces the first contact on the USDM bulb. You can see here I've got it replaced with a fairly cheap LED. It'll do the job for now. I just kind of wanted to test it out to start with. I'll get to that later. And then you've got the actual signal. These will run under here as a part of the wiring harness up into the JDM connector. Now what I have here is a USDM connector. Now the JDM connector is the 6-prong connector up top. After isolating this, realizing I was going to run it off a different circuit to accomplish a more similar effect to the USDM car, once you take that out of the equation, getting the connectors to work is actually very simple. You can actually just take a whole USDM connector from, like, say, your stock headlight, take it, and on these two red wires that would lead to your low beam bulb attachment, you can just chop those off. I gave myself a little extra room to play with. That's why the grommet is still there. What I did was I cut those off and cut it in a similar location on the JDM harness, and then they actually plug in right together. Since I planned on using the USDM 9006 bulb, I just put that in so the harness connects right to there. This connector will slip right onto this holder, keeps that in place, keeps it from jostling around any, and then your USDM male connector will actually plug right into there. Never needed two hands to do that before. Then you'll connect these. As far as getting these things connected, what I chose to use, what I use around the shop, is weatherproof butt splice connectors. It's basically just your regular crimp connectors, but they have heat shrink tubing on the edges, so that you can get them heated up and get them sealed down without having to use anything else to protect them from the elements. I like it. They work pretty well. Now for the running lamps and the signals, like I said, I don't have these finished, so this is kind of going to look a little ghetto, but it'll kind of give you a basic idea. Like I said, in the United States cars, they use a dual contact bulb that produces the running light and the turn signal, because in the USDM cars, they use an amber light, because in that corner it's there's an amber panel. In the JDM cars, them having the clear chrome panel, they have this light that acts as the running bulb. That would just normally be a regular 168 or 194. And what it does is it illuminates this bar, and that becomes your running light. Looks pretty sweet. And then your turn signal is housed in the rest of that reflector and lights up, obviously, when you hit the turn signal. So, well, at least the way I'm going to accomplish that, the way I've got it working, is considering that I want the DRL, or the running light function. The USDM connector has 3 prongs. The JDM connector only has 2 prongs, a positive and a negative. But the USDM has 2 positive and 1 negative, basically, so that they can retain the function of a running light and then switch to a higher power for the signal. You get the idea. I didn't explain it the best there, but you understand, hopefully. Anyway, so what I've done here is I've completely taken the running light off the wiring harness that I'm using, so that it can more easily, so that the main wiring harness is just gonna be a little bit more plug and play. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to run the positive for the running light into the positive for the running light portion of the USDM signal. So this is going to be tapped into the running light, the wire that produces the running light signal on the USDM socket. And then, obviously, the signal positive and the signal ground, so that when I hit the signals, the signal light lights up. But basically, I'm just going to use the connections that are, or the wires that are already there in the USDM signal pigtail as the source for my running light and my turn signal. It's pretty simple. I know I haven't put it in the simplest of terms, but once you get it in hand, it's going to be a lot easier to understand. The way I'm going to accomplish this is, since in the USDM signal, the USDM signal socket has 1 ground and 2 positives. So I'm going to have my daytime running light, or my parking light, share the ground with the signal. Mind you, like I already said, this is really ghetto looking because I'm just testing it right now. But it's sharing that negative wire, which is going to be tapped into and into the negative wire on the signal pigtail. And then the signal positive and the parking light positive are going to be tapped into their locations. And it should produce the same effect. I've kind of done a few tests with it. I don't have it in the car yet. I'm still driving with my USDM headlights, so I don't have any videos to show you in the car, but I've tested them all individually with a bench tester, and everything works pretty well. So obviously I'm going to try and get the USDM actual signal pigtail, so I don't have all this electrical tape that looks terrible. But I'm going to get the JDM. What I would do is I would get the JDM pigtail so that you can connect to that, and then run that ground for your daytime running light into the ground from the signal, and have that share ground, cut off the USDM pigtail, and then heat shrink butt splice connector your wires together, so that instead of using the USDM connector pigtail, you use the JDM connector pigtail, or connector pigtail that connects to the bulb socket, so that you can retain this function. That's just how I'm recommending you do it, if you want as close to a plug and play option as possible. If there's a better way to do it, if you can come up with a better way of doing it, please let me know. This is just the way that I found to be easiest with the tools I had available and just kind of how I saw it come together at first. If there's a better way of doing it, I would love to know, because I'm always looking for an easier way to do stuff. So that's pretty much it. It's like I said, fairly simple. Hopefully this helps anybody out who's thinking about doing a JDM headlight upgrade. I know that when I was gonna do it, I had a lot of ideas about how I was gonna make it work, but it was kind of hard to plan for it, just because I didn't have the headlights in hand. Once you have the headlights in hand, it becomes a lot easier. But if you're like me, I like to try and figure out what all is involved in a modification before I get into it. So hopefully this can help someone out, especially if you're like me and want to make something fairly plug and play. I've seen a couple guys put walkthroughs on LegacyGT.com. The one that I'm thinking of right offhand, his is a really good walkthrough. He's showing you how to do the JDM headlight install, not the install, but basically the conversion. But he's doing it with an aftermarket HID kit. I don't know if his is 55 watt, but he's doing it with an aftermarket HID kit. I wanted to use the stock ballast and have the option to switch out. I'm going to switch out for a 6000K bulb for a more white light, because the ones that come with are a little bit closer to the incandescent color. But if you just want to pick up the projectors and do as little as possible to get into the car, that's kind of what I'm trying to show you. So if you have any questions on anything, if there's anything that I can explain better for you, just send me a private message through LegacyGT.com. My username is BadWolf, all capital letters. I think I explained everything pretty clearly, but if you're like me, you're probably going to have a couple questions, but probably not many, since this is a really easy conversion to do. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Like I said, if you got any questions, if there's anything I can explain better, feel free to shoot me a message on legacy.com. That's it. Thanks.